Commission at the time such item is discussed by the Architectural and Design Commission. Speaker cards are available at the rear of the council chambers. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. First item on the agenda under purpose is to approve minutes from the regular meeting of October 6th, 2011. Do we have a motion and a second on this item?
Move to accept the minutes.
I second. So, let's vote. Courtney? We're voting. There you go. Motion passes 6-0. Second item on the agenda is the master plan for trails and bikeways, presentation by Ryan Snyder.
Very good. So, just to give you a little background on where we're at and how we got here, we began this process in September 2010. So we've been working at it for a while. We've been having pretty regular staff meetings almost every month, except for the last few months when there's just been a lot of things to review. We've had 4 technical advisory committee meetings. We've had a number of public workshops, 3 general public workshops and 2 workshops each for the equestrian community and the disabled community. We've reviewed background documents, did a lot of field work, spent a lot of time out in the field measuring, taking pictures, and riding our bikes and getting a feel for what's out there. And then draft maps, spent a lot of time with draft maps, and now we've got a draft plan. The plan components are shown there. We have to do everything in a way that complies with the Caltrans code. It's a state streets and highways code that specifies what goes in a bicycle plan. This makes the city eligible for bicycle transportation account funds. So much of what's in the plan along the lines of bicycling has to do with that. So we've got an executive summary, an introduction. We've got a chapter on public outreach that describes what we did. We talk about the planning context. We spent quite a bit of time with goals, policies, and actions, both with staff as well as with technical advisory committee. And a chapter on existing conditions, what's out there, both in the way of bicycle facilities, but also pedestrian facilities, equestrian trail facilities, and some of the ADA issues. And we have a bicycle plan. So we've really got 4 sort of plans that are the core of this overall plan that's really one. We've got a bicycle plan, we've got a trails plan, a pedestrian plan, and a transition plan that satisfies the Americans with Disabilities Act. So it's really 4 plans wrapped into one. We've got a chapter on funding, we've got a chapter on implementation, and design guidelines, and then some appendices that... Is your microphone on? I think so.
Oh, there you go. Am I not speaking? Close enough. Speak. Okay. Sorry. It won't come any closer. I'll move closer to it. Overall, it fills a general plan directive. The plan can be implemented incrementally and will be implemented as either funding becomes available and the city applies for funds, or new development comes in, or just as things are done. For example, when the streets are restriped or resurfaced, that's a time when the city can stripe the bike lanes, for example. But the plan allows for new types of funding so the city can apply for funds, it qualifies for funds. And the idea overall is not just a bike and ped and trails plan and ADA plan. It's really something bigger than that. It's to make a healthier, livable, active Lancaster that has a lot more value to it than just really looking at those modes. The introduction contains a section that talks about the various benefits, the health and the safety and the cost savings and economic development and so forth. It also talks about the background of the plan and section on public outreach that describes what we did in terms of the TAC committee, in terms of a survey that was conducted. You may remember we circulated a survey. Well, it's got the tables and charts and all of that, the results of the survey. We also had two walk audits, three walk audits, I believe it was, in January, where we went to different key locations and brought quite a few people from the community out to walk around those areas and to talk about some of the key pedestrian issues at those locations. We collected public comments by phone, email, fax, and so forth as well. We had to do a sort of an analysis of the planning context, a little bit of background, what your general plan says, what the other plans that are out there say, so that we're fitting in with everything. We looked at some census data, we looked at regional connections, and just to make sure that we're fitting in with everything. The goals, policies, and actions chapter has these goals. And I won't go over every policy and action, but the goals start with having a safe and connected street, connected and convenient street environment, off-street shared paths, amenities and facilities for bikes, and bicycling and walking commuting, and then we support Destination Lancaster. Under the goals, we have the policies, and then under each policy is are the actions. Here's a sample policy. The city will work to create a network of bike ways so that every neighborhood is within a half mile of a bicycling route. So in order to make that happen, the actions would be those there: maintaining the regional roadway system, creating regional links, putting appropriate devices to calm cars, as well as some other things that will be done to implement that. We looked at the existing conditions. Again, spent a lot of time doing field work, measuring the streets, looking at the intersections, looking at sidewalks, trail conditions, and all that. We do have, as of the writing of this report, 5 miles of bike paths already, 35 miles of bike lanes, about 3 miles of signed routes, and some existing trails along Amargosa Creek, and then some of the maintenance district rights of way. And there's a section on what programs the city has been doing. The city's actually been, in my experience, I can't think of a city that's doing more for promoting active lifestyles than Lancaster. You've got all these just different programs that, the boulevard activity, there's a farmer's market going on right now, and the rides and all these things the city's been doing. So, and that's a real big, important part of making this plan work. So the bicycle plan contains 40 miles of Class 1 bike paths, 137 miles of bike lanes, and 37 miles of signed bike routes. Just to give you a sense of what these are, bike paths, call them Class 1. It's like the path along the railroad right-of-way near Sierra Highway. And you're familiar with bike lanes. We've got quite a few of these here in the city. So just a striped lane. And then signed routes are something that's a little new to Lancaster, but we're doing things like putting these stencils on the ground now to make these more useful. And then there's some new things that we're doing with buffered bike lanes. And Lancaster is actually a pioneer. Some of the work Michelle's doing is actually pioneering work in California, one of the first cities to do both buffered bike lanes and pretty soon colored bike lanes. So these are something that gives the cyclists a little more visibility, a little more protection. And in some places where we don't have the road completely built out yet, and there's not curb and gutter, it might be just to widen the pavement, or even connect where, there's a lot of hopscotch development in Lancaster, to connect some of those developments with paths actually that could make a really nice bikeway. We've also got quite a bit of information about other components of the bicycle infrastructure having to do with parking and amenities, and carrying on programs like in promotional campaigns and educational campaigns, how enforcement can play a role, and how the program can be evaluated over time. The trails plan contains about 48 miles of equestrian and pedestrian trails, 6 miles of multi-purpose paths, which would be both hard and soft surface, 2 jogging loops, 24 miles total, that would consist of a mix of earthen paths, which are soft surface, or a rubberized sidewalk to connect. So these will go through neighborhoods. And then we've got some new candidate trailheads. We do have a couple trailheads in the city already, but to be able for somebody to go out and park and get out and get on a path, or to start riding a bike, or to unload a horse and to get out on the path, we've got some of those. And we've got a description of some of the other things that go along the trail. It's not just the trail itself, but you need benches, you need shelter from the weather, drinking fountains, and quite a few other things that help make the trail experience more sort of enjoyable. There's other facilities here. You notice the drinking fountains, and you notice the small drinking fountain in the one picture for dogs. So this is something that cities that have a lot of trails are doing, and there's another type of drinking fountain for horses. So these are the kinds of things that make these work. So we've got a lot of information about how the cross sections of the trails can work, and how we really design for both. There's different kinds of trails. There's sort of single track trails, and less improved trails, and more improved trails, and then highly developed trails. Here's a picture of a rubberized sidewalk that provides a much softer surface for somebody to jog on than concrete. And the city is going to, we've got information in here about what the city will be doing to promote the trails, the kinds of things that, Lancaster Trails Days and community cleanups, and different things that get people out on them. For the pedestrian plan, we started off with about 50 locations. We ended up with about 60 locations that were identified through the staff and the Technical Advisory Committee, as well as the public, as those places that needed improvements for pedestrians the most. And the vast majority of these are intersections that people need help crossing. So it might be a missing sidewalk somewhere. But we applied the principles of good pedestrian design when we decided what devices would go out there to, for example, shorten pedestrian crossings, reducing the curb radii, slowing the traffic, and some other things. And we have a list of devices that we use. So the type of thing you would do would be, in this example, where you have an intersection like at 14 and Avenue K, just to add countdown signals, to put in a marked crosswalk, and some well-placed pedestrian activated poles for them to activate the signals, and some things like that to make the crossing better. Or another sample, to mark the crosswalks well, to put what we call advanced yield lines in, and signs to make people aware. And other things like truncated domes at the ramps to make sure that people who are sight impaired know where the edge of the crosswalk is. The ADA transition plan took those same locations, and we identified different barriers. Some of those might be at bus stops. They might be, the push-button poles could have a better placement, or the ramps might not be ideal. We also talked about adding audio devices for sight-impaired people at some of these locations. Missing sidewalks were identified, and methodology for the city to self-evaluate it. So these are kind of pictures of the types of things that we looked for to what was called removing barriers to travel for people who have various disabilities. And also, as required by federal law, and by the way, again, with this plan, Lancaster becomes one of the very first cities to have an ADA transition plan. Something that is required by federal law, but very few cities have complied with. So you have that, and one of the things we have to do is commit a budget every year and have a schedule of when these barriers will be removed, as well as identifying a coordinator and having a grievance procedure as well. We identified quite a few funding sources in the plan, state, local, federal, just so that the city has all sort of options to get money. We've got an implementation plan. So for the bikes, it'll take about $300 million for on-streets, about $44 million for paths, and $344,000 for parking. But these numbers can change quite a bit. A lot of the on-street can be done when the streets are resurfaced, and you don't have to spend that money. So these are just if you were to just do them on their own. The equestrian trails, we've got an implementation schedule for that as well. And we went through a project prioritization process whereby we looked at this sort of criteria to prioritize the projects for each of these plans. And those of you who came to our public workshop may remember the dot exercise, where people put their dots on the projects on the boards to tell us what their priorities are. And that was actually the first thing that we looked at, and the most important thing we looked at. We thought, where people want facilities, that's probably where we ought to put them next. But we also looked at other things like key destinations being served, like the hospital or the college or the downtown area and schools and so forth. Completing networks and some of this other criteria we applied in setting our priorities. So we ended up with these priority, each project is listed in a priority table. We have 3 priority tables, short term, which are the sort of higher priority, so medium term and longer term projects. We've got a chapter on design guidelines for all of these, again, the bikes, the pedestrians, the trails. So there's quite a bit of pictures and graphics and other things in here in this chapter to instruct the city on best practices for designing these various facilities. And okay, I think we're back. Thank you.
She has a magic touch.
Yeah, it didn't work for me. So anyhow, a lot of guidelines as to how to do that. And some of these are standards, and others of them are guidelines, just sort of good practices. And then in the appendices, we have, it's long, all the survey notes written up on the different bikeway sections in every section of the street and what we propose to do on every section of the street. And then we've got cost estimates in Appendix B. Just a few other things that we talk about in the plan. Roundabouts, a type of intersection control that can be good for both pedestrians and bicycles as well as motor vehicles. They slow speed, reduce conflicts, and overall reduce a lot of crashes. And they also have about 30% more capacity to handle traffic than a signalized intersection. So some discussion about roundabouts, and here's a slide that shows the different components of a roundabout. I know the city's about ready to start using these, and this is a real good device, and on a national level, highly recommended by some of the people that are doing a lot of design these days as really an important device. Okay, so you can see how somebody proceeding through there has to slow down. And here's an example in La Jolla where they put in a series of 3 roundabouts. They were able to reduce the number of lanes, widen the sidewalks, and make a very different Main Street environment out of La Jolla Boulevard there. One of the best examples. And this carries well over 20,000 cars per day. And just a few other sort of photo simulations to show you what can be done with the types of things we're recommending. You can take sort of a nondescript location, like, whoops, what happened? Oh, okay, there's a simulation like that, and just sort of add to it. Or you can take an intersection like this that it's okay, but do a few things to it and it'll improve. Okay, we can add the crosswalks. Oh, these simulations are a little slow. Widen the sidewalks, put some parkway in there. Maybe a little circle and really make a nice intersection, a much nicer neighborhood out of it. Or just one last example of the kind of thing, again, sort of a nondescript bus stop, but what can be done to make this a more interesting place and a better place to wait for a bus. I wasn't doing this before. So adding the bike lane, adding a nice crosswalk, better crossing for pedestrians there, coloring the bike lane, adding some landscaping, and then a nice bus shelter. So this is the kind of, the sorts of things that can be done. So that concludes the presentation, and with that, open up for questions and comments.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
Yes, I have one. Future, is it built into this plan? Meaning, Lancaster's kind of large right now. It has some outlying areas, and so you would hope. Well, I guess the thought would be we wouldn't have to redo it, but incorporate what we already have. If we move, say, further out, like to your Avenue H's and
Yes.
So it could be already connected or have those.
It's one of the big advantages of having a plan like this, is when new development comes in, it's, the city has a lot of leverage to say that these things go along with new development. We have a section in the design chapter on designing with new development. It's one challenge to, in many cases, take an existing street or an existing intersection or neighborhood and try to retrofit it. But it's a whole lot better and easier if we can sort of do it with this sort of thinking in mind when the new development occurs. So a lot of guidelines for new development. We've got bikeways and trails in some of the areas that haven't been developed yet, with the idea that, particularly with the bikeways, that when those areas are developed, that they will come in with, with those bike lanes on the streets or with the paths that are in the plan.
Thank you.
No.
Hi, I have a question. The buffered bike lanes in the plan, are any of them intended to be planted or have any other separation aside from just a painted buffer?
That's called a protected bike lane.
Understood, okay.
That could be added, but it gets a little tricky with maintenance. You need extra space. You need enough space for a street sweeper to get in. But you might have that kind of space in some of these places. Those could always be added to some of the buffered bike lanes if there's enough room, but it does raise other maintenance issues, and it's a little significantly more costly. So for the short run, the buffered bike lanes will provide more space, I think, between the cyclist and the motor vehicles.
So then, obviously, the buffered bike lanes, there's nothing in the budget for them to be planted or to be landscaped in any other way. It's just the
Not at this point.
painted line.
We didn't have any what we call protected bike lanes, or in some cases two-way cycle tracks. We didn't put those.
Is there a reason why?
Well, we thought that this was sort of more appropriate for where we're at.
Okay.
Sort of treatment. Those work very well, I think, in a real dense, highly urbanized environment, and that's where they're going in primarily right now.
Right.
New York City and downtown Vancouver and Montreal has a whole network of them, but in very urban areas.
Okay. Thank you.
So.
Do any other commissioners have any questions? No? Thank you, Ryan.
Right. Okay. You're welcome.
The Master Plan of Trails and Bikeways has a very substantial amount of information for our commission to review. In order to ensure that each section is given equal research time, review, and consideration by this commission, we'll be splitting the sections for review into 3 groups. Commissioners Stallworth and Pursley will research and review the pedestrian section. Commissioners Mercy and Haas will research and review the equestrian section. Commissioner Wiley and myself will review the cycling section. Each group will work in conjunction with city staff and focus on their section of the master plan, research and connectivity, and any community questions or concerns, and report their findings to the entire commission for review at each preceding meeting. The entire commission will receive copies of any and all community questions or concerns for all sections and each group's section findings. As our commission just recently received this master plan and the sections have just been assigned, we're happy to hear any community input and will address any questions or concerns regarding each section at our next meeting. Public business from the floor. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the commission on any subject regarding city business. Under state legislation, no action may be taken on non-agenda items. Members of the public... Oh, you didn't get to the speaker cards yet.
Excuse me, Chairman Bartlett. We do have a speaker's card for the master plan. If you want to take that testimony before you move to non-agenda items,
Oh, I'm sorry. It didn't...
it would be
was out of order.
appropriate to take that.
Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, we do. Ms. Parsons.
Ms. Parsons?
Hi, how you doing?
Your time started.
Oh, has it? Oh, are we on time too? Okay. Sort of different. Apologize. Questions and comments we can ask, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. My question is, some of my comments are that the roundabout that's proposed it's for 20 miles per hour, it's recommended, and right now the hustle and bustle that we use 10th and Lancaster Boulevard between the business hours, I don't know how that's going to fit. And I also found that if they're good for communities and they work out fine, but at the start of communities, say if my grandma when driving through there, 10th and J, it's a common intersection. My grandma would just keep having trouble. So I actually proposed to actually have another design for a roundabout. And so I didn't see any maps on here, so I'm not sure if there's, are there any actually, is anything cited? Because I found that it's a good presentation, yes, for everything that a bikeway or a plan should have in it. However, I felt that, and in addition, I felt that for beautifying our land, our shrubbery, our landscape, and good walkway improvements and signage for that. And ADA, I'm not quite sure what extra implements. I didn't really see it. I heard you speak of it, and of course to take the dust out of some of the buses where the bus pick up the passengers, and then also the ADA. Since my plan, there's in my site plan, there's the railway. So I did the railways, including. However, I was looking for ADA, and I did an ADA safety for wheelchairs, wheelchair crossings, and of course I have the ramp or the mechanism crossway for the gates and the gate rail crossing.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons. Do we have another speaker card?
I have no more speakers cards. You might poll the audience if there are anybody else who wants to testify at this point on it.
Is there anyone else who would like to come up and ask questions or make comments?
And just by way of reference, we are going to take the main points of any speakers, and we will compile that as part of the overall public comments and provide some staff analysis for the commission's consideration on all the points made by speakers.
Okay. Nobody else wants to make any comments? You already had your 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm not a speaker. I'm not a speaker, and so I'd like to maybe schedule something for my review as well. Oh, on top, just underlay here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to non-agenda items. Public business from the floor. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the commission on any subject regarding city business. Under state legislation, no action can be taken on non-agenda items. Members of the public should be aware of this when addressing the commission regarding items not specifically referenced on the agenda. Please complete a speaker card for the recording secretary. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have any speaker cards for non-agenda items?
No, we do not.
Okay. Since there are none, this meeting is adjourned to, did we determine when that was going to be? It is, we're not doing one before then?
Meetings.
I wanted to ask a question. I just wasn't sure if it was to be directed to Ryan or perhaps to Sylvia or Brian. Is now an opportunity for me to do that, or is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that came to my attention today, it talks about in policy number 2, the city will actively accommodate and encourage safe and convenient bicycle and pedestrian utilitarian trips to schools, stores, parks, and other destinations throughout Lancaster. And in a non-related meeting that Sylvia and Brian and I were in today, it came up that sometimes there's pedestrian issues within some rather large parking lots that we have within Lancaster. And though it appears at times that there have been adjustments made to accommodate pedestrians, frequently it is difficult to get from one side of a large shopping center to another side of a large shopping center. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that I am guilty of parking in a shopping center and then going to one store and then getting in my car and driving to the other side of the shopping center because pedestrian access is difficult. And I would be curious to know if there has been any talk amongst yourselves in the planning department, or if Ryan has any input on maybe putting in some future plans regarding future parking lot improvements or developments that would make them more pedestrian friendly.
The answer is yes. There has been some thought to that, but your comment touches a number of issues, and I think we'll take that and respond to it in a more comprehensive manner to give you some specifics.
Okay, so, and this is not my area, obviously. Is it something that I should take up with my fellow commissioners as they're reviewing with Commissioner Wiley and Commissioner Bartlett as they're reviewing the bicycle and pedestrian paths, or
you can certainly provide your concerns to them, yes.
Right on.
But we will as a staff also respond to your comment.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. And Ryan, do you have anything where that's concerned?
Yeah, in the section for new development, there's discussion about parking. It's primarily about the location of parking and how it juxtaposes itself with adjacent buildings. I don't believe we have anything there about walking through parking lots, but it's an important issue. And I've seen treatments in other places where they've actually got nice walkways through parking lots. So, I mean, if that were your pleasure, we could add something related to that in the new development section.
Thank you. So that's something that you guys will address at the next meeting or later on, and then whether or not Ryan gets involved, you're in charge, right? No.
And I'll take direction.
All right. Thanks.
Anyone else? No? No?
The following dates are available for the chambers here. It's going to be Thursday, the 10th, Monday, the 14th, Thursday, the 17th, and Tuesday, the 22nd. Those are the days that council chambers are available in November.
November, okay.
The 10th, the 14th, the 17th, the 22nd.
You can't do the 17th, okay. And then Thanksgiving is when? The 24th, so that's probably not a good week to do that. The 14th was a Monday, right?
That's correct.
Yes. Does the 14th work for anyone? Does the 14th work for you? 14th work for you? Courtney?
At 5?
So the 14th then? At 5 o'clock? Does that work for you?
We can set that date for you, but Brian will not be available.
That happens to coincide with a special meeting called by the regular Planning Commission. They are not in here, but they have a meeting at 4:30 on that day, and I expect that to go till probably about 6:30. So Sylvia and I would not be available for that. Elma, and I don't know about Michelle. Oh, yeah. So that may not be the greatest of days to select.
So what's the date today? The 10th is only a week. I think we might need a little more than a week to review this information. 14th, and you said the 17th and 22nd. So we might have to just wait until December 1st then. Is the 22nd working for anyone?
22nd would be okay.
That works for you? What about the 22nd? It's 2 days before Thanksgiving. Sandra, does that work for you?
Is the council meeting canceled that week?
Oh, it's a Tuesday. There's no council meeting that week? Oh. So does the 22nd work for everyone then? Tuesday, 5 o'clock? All in favor? Okay, we'll take Tuesday the 22nd then. So this meeting is adjourned to November 22nd at 5 p.m.